Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim, and Chris. On today's Madrid catch-up,
Ruud downs Draper for maiden masters.
Sabalenka sinks Gauff for third crown.
And Jannik Sinner returns from suspension with the Italian Open set to get underway in Rome.
Kim, Chris, today is the 5th of May, and we are here to catch up on the week in tennis at Tennis Weekly HQ, brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group. So close. This week on Tennis Weekly, we dive in to all of the Madrid Open drama as Jack Draper falls just short of a second Masters title, with Casper Ruud grabbing the biggest title win of his career. On the women's side, Aryna Sabalenka dominates once again over a resurgent Coco Gauff. Could Roland-Garros finally be hers? We break down Iga Swiatek's worrying form and whether it's time for a break, celebrate Naomi Osaka's first title in 4 years, and tackle the latest doping suspension involving Australian Max Purcell. Plus, we preview the Italian Open in Rome with top seed Jannik Sinner returning from suspension in front of his home crowd, plus Carlos Alcaraz also returning from injury. Team, we are getting closer and closer to the second Grand Slam of the season, the French Open. Monte Carlo is in the books. The Madrid Open now in the books. It's all getting very, very tasty.
It is, isn't it? Very tasty, especially if you're a fan of carrots and a carota boy, because Jannik Sinner is back. 3 months has flown by, hasn't it?
And nothing has happened. He's still the top seed at
Not
event.
much has changed, actually. Jack Draper's a bit better now than he was maybe 3 months ago, but I'm not sure there's been a huge changing of the guard that's taken place in his absence.
Yeah, he's been quite fortunate, hasn't he, that Alcaraz has had his own battles with, injuries. Djokovic hasn't been at the races. And so the people that have mostly capitalised haven't really made any sort of dent on Sinner's ranking. So all in all, quite a nice time of the year, I think.
The chasing pack behind him has just basically got bigger and bigger. And I mean, we'll get onto it later, but Casper Ruud winning the Madrid Open, the biggest title of his career, he's now added himself into the chasing pack as well.
They're all playing for a chance to, face off against him in the final, maybe.
Yeah, well, I'm really intrigued to see how Jannik Sinner navigates back onto the court this coming week. But before we get to that point, we've got lots of other things to discuss. I'm very excited because although we're doing our regular catch up this week, there'll be one next week. Joel and I, we've got a very exciting thing coming up next week, haven't we? Because we are interviewing Christopher Clarey about his new book that's coming out very, very shortly on Rafa Nadal. It's called The Warrior. Joel, you've met Christopher before, haven't you? Because he basically did a biography of Roger Federer a few years ago. And now he's worked his magic and he's doing one on Rafa. So really excited to put all our questions to him next week. And that will be coming out as a special episode not too long after.
I'm actually just going to look at the bookcase behind me because his previous book on Roger Federer is on my shelf. Here it is.
Oh, wow.
The Master. And as you said, he's now done 2 of the 3. He's got Rafa and The Warrior coming out next week. And we're going to be interviewing Christopher. We've also going to have a couple of copies of the book to give away to our listeners. So we're going to be running a competition for that. So it's all hands on deck. Very, very exciting. And Kim, as the Rafa master, you're going to be able to get under the skin of the champ.
She's also the warrior of the podcast, isn't she?
Well, all these words coming out, these buzzwords. No, I'm really looking forward to it because it would be a lovely way to kind of reflect on Rafa's career and, especially the clay court. This is the season of the clay, and obviously Rafa's coming back for that ceremony in Roland-Garros. It seems very fitting that this book is coming out at this time of the year, and really just it'd be a lovely trip down memory lane. All those 14 French Open titles, reliving all of them. Really looking forward to delving into it with Christopher next week. And I'm kind of thinking it would make sense for him logically to do Novak Djokovic next.
I know we're going to have to ask. We're going to have to ask him that question, aren't we?
What would it be called?
The GOAT.
Oh, that's a great question. The title.
The
Joker.
The Joker. You can't call it that, can you?
Well, no, but I mean that's maybe not.
The Mentalist. I don't know.
Something like that could be interesting.
Something to do with maybe his mental approach to the game. I feel like that's what we're going to know him best for. But yeah, maybe we'll we'll put that to Chris for next week. All I will say is when I messaged him the other week about doing the interview, he said it's been a whirlwind of a journey to get the book out. So very, very excited to uncovering what he meant by that.
Well, that could be very exciting.
Absolutely.
I was just thinking, of whirlwinds. There's been a whirlwind for Naomi Osaka coming back to the tour. And that's what really caught my eye this week. And it's on the clay. I think she was a bit of a warrior. She actually dropped down to 125 level. And we do have a bit of a debate in our second half where we'll look at this in a bit more detail. But she picked up her first title since the 2021 Australian Open.
Bit of a different title.
It's a bit different. It's a bit smaller, the trophy. It has been won by some previous greats like Sloane Stephens. So I'd say this is a 1-2-5
right
with some big pedigree.
Yeah.
But I just thought we won't normally cover this as part of we don't cover the Challenger Tour regularly, but we do delve into some of these events if there's something of note that happens. And this certainly does feel like it's of note because it's on clay. She got the title. She won 5 matches in a row on the dirt. And that's the first time that she's ever won more than 3, I should say. She's not won 4 before, so that's hugely impressive from her. She did it the hard way in some of those matches, and it did look blooming windy at times. I mean, you could barely see the ball. So even the camera angle on the feed. I mean, Joel, you'll love this. I was streaming this, obviously.
We were in for a treat with the Madrid Open over the weekend, and you were choosing to watch a grainy feed of a WTA 125.
I mean, the camera was shaking. It was a couple of megapixels, but still, Naomi got it done. I was thinking, is it Naomi Osaka or is it Naomi Clay Osaka, Joel?
Oh, how long did it take to think that up?
I quite like the ring of Clay Osaka, but I think she's going to need to. I know it's a WTA WTA tiered event. She's going to need to upgrade that for me to the proper tour for a Clayomi treatment.
Okay, well, we'll wait to see what happens in Rome then.
But Bianca Andreescu as well, doubles champion out in Catalonia, another WTA 1-2 invite. It does show there is a good
ticket. Yeah.
It's a good ticket. Yeah, you may be surprised who you might see at that level.
Grand Slam champions if you look out for maybe a local 125 event near you.
Estoril, Felix Auger-Aliassime was there as well.
Not for long though.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Not for long.
It seems crazy that she'd not won more than 3 matches on clay before, given that, she's a 4-time Grand Slam champion, albeit those Grand Slams being on hard courts. It just seems crazy that hadn't happened, but she's finally ticked that box, even if it wasn't a 125.
The 125 box.
It is important. And I think it's quite funny to see, Patrick Mouratoglou, the coach, is obviously down there. And who'd have thought their first trophy as a partnership would be the 125 and St. Melo? So
I can't knock it because I'm an Andy Murray fan, and he went that route as well. So
the Provence Challenger,
the Provence Challenger, it can work. It can work.
Who wouldn't want a week in Provence? But Joel, let's tell us what's been your highlight of the past week. Any other rogue result? Carrying
on the whirlwind analogy. We've got a whirlwind romance. I've noticed continuing. Grigor Dimitrov was caught. I think he's in a relationship, dating girlfriend, actress. I hope I'm saying this right. Isa Gonzalez, who is in Apple TV's Fountain. Is it Fountain of Youth TV series? And they were spotted in Madrid together. And Grigor Dimitrov not doing too badly for himself, is he?
I mean, he likes a celebrity partner, doesn't he? I think it's fair to say.
Scherzinger was a particularly noticeable one. That was who else was there? Sharapova and Serena.
Yeah,
he loves a celebrity, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Well, he's obviously, I think it looks
he's
like
eligible, isn't he? Yeah,
so
very much.
I don't know the series that she's been in, but I'm sure it's probably worth a watch. If maybe I don't know. I don't have Apple TV, so I'm quite ignorant to that one. But yeah, thanks Joel for bringing us the showbiz section of the podcast. This episode is brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group,
the leading provider of travel, hospitality, and customer experiences at global sporting events, including this year's Roland-Garros.
By booking with Sports Travel and Hospitality Group, tennis fans around the world can witness the pinnacle of the clay court season unfold, all the while indulging in luxurious hospitality that only Roland-Garros can provide.
As an official agent of Roland-Garros, Sports Travel and Hospitality Group guarantees you unrivaled views from the best seats in the house on Philippe Chatrier, as well as world-class cuisine and beverages served on site.
With Sports Travel and Hospitality Group, you also have access to the matches of your choosing, with 3 package tiers available across the entire tournament.
Learn more and book your Roland-Garros hospitality package today at sportstravelhospitality.com/Roland-Garros. That's sportstravelhospitality.com/Roland-Garros.
So what are you waiting for? Secure your premium seat at Roland-Garros today for a once-in-a-lifetime Grand Slam tennis experience.
The link is in the description.
And on to the tennis, because we have lots to catch up on from the last week in Madrid, namely Casper Ruud winning his biggest title ever, his first 1,000 event. And after previously to quite a lot of big finals, but losing them, he's finally been the one to come out on top. But it wasn't easy. 3 sets against Jack Draper yesterday at the Caja Mágica. And he came through 6-4 in the final set, Casper Ruud, to get his long-awaited Masters 1000. Joel, obviously British fans would have been wanting Draper to get this, to get his second 1000 of the year. And it almost felt like going in, he was the favourite. Despite Casper Ruud's sort of pedigree on clay, it felt like maybe Jack had the ascendancy, but wasn't quite to be this time. He did come out second best.
Yeah, it was. I mean, first of all, it was a great match, 2 great competitors. And, I think all the noise, particularly for British fans, was about Draper going into it. He hadn't dropped a set all week. I think he had played the flashier tennis, or the more kind of eye-catching tennis. And it just felt, off the back of winning Indian Wells, who knows, maybe this was actually going to be a time he was going to win his second Masters title of the season and assert himself as a top 5 player, and who knows, a contender for the French Open. But I think we forget Casper Ruud's pedigree on clay is something to behold as well, just in terms of number of match wins. He is an experienced competitor and a very, very smooth operator. And the way he played, particularly when he was down in that first set, was so impressive. His forehand as well was just magical at times. And what stood out to me was just how aggressive at times he was playing, because although I feel like Draper was doing shots that belonged on the highlight reel, by the end of that third set, honestly, some of those forehands that Casper Ruud was cooking up, I was just like, that is just too good and worthy of being the Madrid Open champion.
Yeah, and Chris, what is it that you think finally clicked for Casper Ruud? He's been in a lot of finals before, but what was it that made the difference this time round for him, do you think?
I think probably it's a case that he took the ball on and knew that he had to take the ball on, because you are going to have to run down a lot of balls against Jack Draper. He's hitting very big. He's not looking, to play counterpunch. Casper Ruud needs to step in there. And he did. I think this is something I've always thought when I've been watching him, is that he has the game to be more aggressive, but he doesn't play more aggressively. And especially in some of those big finals where he's played previously, he's not asserted himself actually in the match, especially early on. So when that first set started to go away from him, I did think we were looking at a straight sets match, but he really hung in there. And I think a key thing, and something we've asked him about previously, is his serve. Sometimes he does rush it, and he actually slowed himself down quite nicely. I don't think he let the pace of Jack Draper's play necessarily get to him, and he won at 81% of points behind that first serve. And I think that was so key in these big moments, because you think that Jack's got the serve, it's going to be a lot harder for him to break, but actually it was Casper who had a lot more opportunities, it felt, at some of those key moments in the match. So I'm very happy for him. And I shouldn't say this because obviously we're a British podcast, we can't hide that. But I do think Casper, being a 3-time major finalist, he's been so close. I think he deserved one of these, don't you think, Kim?
I think so. And he's an all-round nice bloke, isn't he?
He is. He's a good egg.
It's hard to be annoyed.
Mr. Nice Guy on the tour.
Draper.
He is, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you think if Draper had got that first set, things would have gone differently?
Oh, I think, do you know what? And I do think so. But at the same time, if Casper Ruud can come back from, a breakdown and win 3 games in a row against Jack Draper in that first set to nick it, then again, I think it just shows, that he was there up for the fight. Yes, there was that little dip in the second set, but again, hanging on in at the start of that third set, which felt so crucial. I think he's a deserved champion. And Chris, I think it's interesting what you said about kind of taking the ball on, because I sort of associate kind of Ruud's game playing very heavy spin with more typical conditions of like Roland-Garros or the Italian Open in Rome. So I think it just shows the aggression and the mind, that new kind of mindset he's playing with. The fact that he was able to kind of slightly adapt that for Madrid, where the ball goes quicker, they're playing a little bit more altitude. Perhaps is just is that evidence of that, because we would have. Going in, we would have said naturally maybe the conditions favoured Draper, but by the end of it, it just sort of felt like, I don't know, just like a normal clay match.
He has these moments, doesn't he, Casper, where suddenly we take him very, very seriously again, and he really does show his worth and his class and his pedigree. And I think quite often he doesn't necessarily produce that at those key moments. And I think in terms of his game, when I first saw him play in Rome years and years ago, I thought it's like Rafa light. He trained at the Rafa Academy. And then Rafa's obviously a great player on grass, all surfaces, whereas Casper hasn't quite done that on grass or transitioned to the grass very well.
For golf.
Well, I know he loves the golf, but I'm just thinking, well, maybe if he takes this aggressive style and puts it on the grass, he might be able to get, a hole in one at Wimbledon. Who knows?
Ooh, what a golfing pun there, Chris.
What about, I was going to go albatross, but I wasn't sure I could get that in.
Albatross. I mean, in fairness to Casper as well, the finals he's been in previously were against, the likes of Rafa, Djokovic, Alcaraz. So he's always come up against, imperious opponents usually. So it's really nice that he's finally got this 1,000. He's ticked the box. I always say that, but onwards to the rest of the clay season, and we'll see what he can do in Rome. He is fifth in the race now because of all his wins out in Madrid. And I have to say, Jack Draper did incredibly well to get to that final place in fantastic tennis. He is now in the top 5 of the rankings. He has overtaken Novak Djokovic in the rankings. Bet we never thought that was going to be happening anytime soon. Really fantastic stuff. And he is now only the 4th British player to have reached the top 5 in the history of the ATP rankings, which began in 1973. So I don't think we need to specify who the other 3 were, but Andy Murray, Tim Henman and Greg Rosetsky, and now Jack Draper debuts in the top 5. So what a milestone.
It's big, isn't it?
Moment for him.
I think for me, I think it surprised me how soon it's come and how quickly his ascendancy to the top of the rankings has been. But when you do look at the tennis he's been playing at the moment, I know a lot of people talk about his attack and his forehand, but his defensive capabilities as well are impressive. And I think his backhand wing is just as devastating at times as his forehand. And, what I liked against Ruud as well, when he came to the net, he wasn't any sort of slouch at the net either. So he can come into the front of the court, kill the points off. I don't feel like that was necessarily a weakness. I think maybe if there's something to take away, it's just the concentration aspect of his game, because he did dip at the most crucial moments in that first set. And I think that will be maybe something he can take away. But one question I wanted to ask you both, where do you think this leaves Draper and Ruud's prospects for the French Open? I know a lot of people talk about Madrid being like, oh, it's so different to Paris and we can't, compare the two. But for example, Casper Ruud, he's a 2-time finalist in Roland-Garros. Where do you see him in the pecking order with this result?
I can see him being someone who comes through because other people kind of aren't quite at the races yet. And so I think he has a strong chance of being that one that kind of is left to pick up the pieces in a nice way.
Okay. Well, last year he did make the semi-finals and had to he kind of went out in a whimper because he got sick. Casper did. So I think a fit Casper Ruud can definitely make a final. I do agree, if there's an Alcaraz or a Sinner in his draw, you wouldn't necessarily back him to make that final. Draper, though, you feel like he's still on the ascendancy, whereas I feel like Casper, that's probably peak Casper that we saw at this point.
Yeah.
I think over 5 sets.
Was that the best tennis you think you've seen from Casper Ruud?
I think that was right up there. I was really, really impressed with the way he dispatched Zverev the year before at the French, I think it was. Yeah. And when he beat Holger Rune, very impressed by that at the French. He does have the level. That's the thing that you can't underestimate him, and I think people do. But then Draper, I think he's got nothing to lose. I mean, he lost in the first round of Roland-Garros last year. De Jong, I think he lost to in pretty sort of a messy 5-setter, I think. So he's got nothing to lose. He's only got like points to gain. And I think he's very, very motivated to improve. He said after losing this final that the best thing about losing a final is that he knows there's still work to be done. And I think he's doing that work. So it would be great to see if he could get himself into the mix there. And I think he's got as good
Is
a
he
chance
a French
as
Open
anyone.
contender? Or do we think best of...
How can he...
of five is... Do you think
Why
best
not?
of five maybe goes against him a little bit?
If he plays a lot of five-setters, Kim, do you think he could go all the way? That's the big question. Because in Australia, that was a struggle. He did get a pretty easy draw at the US Open before he ended up going out in the semi-finals. So...
He'd need to be winning smoothly and quickly
yes.
in the earlier rounds, I think. I don't know if he's
We're
quite
not going to
up
not
there.
back Jack, though, but we do think...
Battle strong, you know, for
exactly.
intense five-setters on clay round after round. But, you know, in Rome, we've got a couple of weeks in Rome. The seedings are going to be decided, aren't they, for Roland-Garros? So Jack may be, you know, able to get into the top 4 seeds.
Would help.
I mean, that would be a big help, wouldn't it, for Draper? And arguably, that's maybe the one thing that counts against Casper Ruud, regardless of how well he's playing in. His seeding might mean that he's going to face a tricky tie earlier in the tournament.
Oh, just on one last thing on Draper, he's only the second player who's a left-hander to reach the top 5 of the rankings as well. Obviously, the other player being Rafa.
Who is the other player? I can't think.
Who could it be?
I'm not sure.
There's not many lefties, are there,
crazy.
Kim?
Yeah, I was surprised by that. I just, you know, the likes of, you know, Fernando Verdasco brought to mind, but he never reached top 5, so it's not as common as you think, evidently.
Wow.
So but fantastic stuff coming out of Madrid. 2 worthy finalists and a worthy winner there indeed. And let's now catch up on the WTA side of things, because we did have Aryna Sabalenka defeating Coco Gauff to win the title in Madrid for the 3rd time. Straight sets, this one was. And Sabalenka seems to like winning this title in consecutive years, because she won it in 2021, 2023, and now she's back again, getting it done in 2025. But yeah, you know, world number 1, cementing her status, winning this title for the 3rd time and her 20th title overall. Chris, how impressed were you by what you saw from Sabalenka in that final over Coco on Saturday?
I was really impressed with her. I think that the first set especially, I think she played, you know, really well all week, and she's had a few sort of hiccups. It hasn't necessarily been, despite her sort of rankings tally and how dominant she has been, or it feels like she's been. I do think that there's been a couple of disappointments along the way, like the Stuttgart final, for example. She didn't get all of her own way at the Sunshine Double either. So I think it's good to see her kind of getting these titles, because I've always feel with her that she does have probably the biggest game on the tour. And when she plays her A game, she will win matches. And Australia slipped away from her as well, kind of to be added to that list. So when she does get these big titles, I think it's just because she is playing better than everyone else. I think that is her limit is higher in terms of where she could go. So I enjoyed it. I think it wasn't necessarily the highest quality final I've ever seen. I think some of those double faults from Coco Gauff, I think it went up to something just under 10, maybe it was 8, something like that. That was a little bit of a problem for her in the first serve, and second serve would get taking a little bit of a battering at times. But I still just think that it was a good final, and I mean, Aryna Sabalenka is the world number 1 for a reason.
Absolutely. And Coco Gauff did make the second set much closer. The first set was a bit one-sided, but she did have a set point in the second set. But Sabalenka managing to get that one and get the job done at 7-6, you know, in a tie break. But yeah, they've got quite an interesting rivalry, haven't they? Gauff came into this 5-4 in their head-to-head, and obviously, you know, could have gone to a third here. Maybe Gauff could have turned it around, but I don't know. It's a rivalry that, you know, gives us some great matches. It's quite a close rivalry, but I don't know, where are you looking for the rest of the season from these 2 players should they meet again? What is it about their matchups that kind of is you know, brings these kind of quite close encounters, or kind of a sort of up and down result and outcome?
I think with Coco Gauff, I think her movement means that she's always a player from the baseline that you expect her to kind of get one more ball back. And in my view, for Sabalenka, that's one more ball that could be, you know, an unforced error, you know, or a ball into the net, or a ball long, or whatever. And I think that's why it's such a compelling matchup, because she really tests Sabalenka on that kind of patience, staying in the rally and not kind of going for the winner, I think, straight away. I do think some of their matchups in the past have maybe been a little bit kind of, topsy-turvy, and it's I think similar with this matchup. It wasn't necessarily the best tennis from both of them. But having said that, I think Coco Gauff coming into Madrid, she got bageled in her first match, in her first set she played here. So to come all the way through, to the final, no disgrace in losing to Aryna Sabalenka. I think she'll just be happy that, she's back to really kind of where she belongs, and she could even, be number 2 seed come the French Open.
Yeah, that's still up for grabs, isn't it? And Sabalenka dominating this season. It's about kind of who amongst everyone else is going to be that second seed, basically, at Roland-Garros, which we'll get onto in a bit. I mean, Sabalenka, she has the chance so far, this year, to go for the all-time WTA points record for the season. I mean, we're only in May, and she's on 11,118 points, and we've had previous players like Serena and Iga Swiatek only just a bit higher than that in previous years. They're the only 3 women to have ever gone over 11,000 points, which is
a lot of points, Kim, isn't it? It really
it's crazy.
is. It's
it really
not
does
the race,
show how
though.
dominant. No, it's not the race, but it just shows how dominant she has been. Even against top 10 players this year, she's not lost so far. So obviously she lost to Keys in the AO final. She has lost matches, but against the real core top players, she's coming out on top, and just making sure she's going deep at all these tournaments, and that it's shown in the points, isn't it?
It takes an inspired effort to beat her, and I think it is shown by the fact that the top 10 can't get it done, whereas some of these outside players like Ostapenko or surprise packages, I think like Clara Towson as well, they really do play their A game against the number 1. Serena always said that people play their best against you. There's a target on your back. And I think she plays very well with that target on her back. So let's see what she can do. I think Joel made the point. She didn't play Wimbledon last year when we caught up earlier.
Well, do you think she can take over from Serena?
Well, she's got 2,000 points to gain there. Serena in 2013 was on 13,650.
That is a lot of points.
As world number 1. So if Sabalenka can gain about 2,500
improve from a
points,
quarterfinal at the French.
Improving on last year.
I mean, are we just talking about that level of dominance? Are we getting to a point where anything other than a French Open title is going to be a disappointment to Aryna Sabalenka?
Yes, I think so. Because if she's playing her best tennis, she wins the tournament. I think coming runner-up in a tournament, I think you can see the disappointment. She jokes about it, but if you're as good as she is, there will be the sense that you probably could have won that match, or you probably should have won that match. So I think that's the case. I think it's such a different scenario that, I mean, we were talking about, Iga Swiatek going into these sorts of parts of the season thinking, you said 2024, Iga was on 11,600 points, and now times have really changed. It's now Sabalenka who really has the edge, and that was such a close race for so long. And now you'd argue, I mean, the favourite for Roland-Garros, we put it to the polls, didn't we? And the results came back resoundingly, Kim, didn't they?
50% said Aryna Sabalenka as the favourite for Roland-Garros. And you might think, what about Swiatek, multiple Roland-Garros champion? She was only down at 15% of the vote.
Wow.
And Coco Gauff was on 17%, and other had 18%.
So that's Sloane Stephens and Naomi Osaka is other, right?
Or Ostapenko, perhaps.
Ostapenko, Svitolina.
We do have to talk about Iga Swiatek, because her struggles continued. In the semi-final, she got blasted off the court, quite frankly, by Coco Gauff, 6-1, 6-1. I mean, it's been a long time since Swiatek's only won 2 games in a match, especially, on a clay court. It's bizarre. And Coco Gauff now against Swiatek, she's won the last 3 matches against Swiatek. It was not that way in their head-to-head previously. And yeah, Gauff obviously managing to get the win in quite comprehensive fashion. What's going on for Swiatek? She is now lost the last 6 semi-finals she's been in the last year. Does she need some time off? Do you think it's sensible for her to even play Roland-Garros, given that she's kind of maybe not at the races?
Oh, that's a very big question.
She's got to play. I mean, she's got to play.
That would be admitting defeat, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be.
If she missed it.
She's got to play as the defending champion. Certainly with the grass court season, there might be more of a conversation there. And it's been interesting to hear that there are rumours that she might take a break and not play Wimbledon, not play the grass court season. And I think that would maybe be a smart opportunity.
Where
but
did
really,
you hear these rumors, Joel? This sounds very
Well,
intriguing.
this
Like
is
a
from I've
ear to
heard
the
it
Does she
wind.
from.
think grass is for, the golf as well?
There's some Polish reports in the press,
Okay.
I think. But I think just at the moment, for me, the way I'm kind of looking at how Swiatek is playing, I still think the consistency is there, and she's still reaching the deeper end of the tournaments that she is playing in. But when it comes to those matchups with the players around her that might have been a formality or a comfortable victory a few seasons ago, last season, it's just not there anymore. And she doesn't necessarily have, I think, that winning edge or that ruthlessness that she once had. And some of the kind of mutterings I hear from her on the court, and I've been reading about having her head under a towel during the changeover. I think as much it is maybe about her tennis, I think mentally as well, it just feels like it's all coming to a head here. There's lots of pressure on her. We're reaching boiling point because it's the clay season. She's got lots of points to defend, and it really feels like it's impacting her game. And the way the team is set up at the moment, it doesn't feel like it's conducive to her winning titles. Not necessarily playing tennis and getting to a semi-final, but beyond that stage, they've really lost that winning edge.
Tennis is a confidence game, though, and I think it's clear that she doesn't have the confidence that she did have when she was winning matches, and she isn't going out there as though she's going to win matches. I think she was so famous for her fast starts, and really now that first set, I mean, she got bageled by Keys. She did manage to turn that one around. She is still a fantastic player, a player of incredible pedigree, but it is definitely a case that, since that ban that she had from the contaminated product, as well as her coach that she'd been with for a considerable period of time, Wojciechowski, who had been with her for, 3 years, all of her, not all of her, but most of her big successes. That was a very established partnership, and that ended very abruptly around that time. And I think that's something that when she had such a perfect record almost, and she is a perfectionist, and then you lose that team, and then you start to lose matches, I think you realize that the standard that you hold yourself to and the standard that everyone else holds you to is actually not helping you necessarily.
Yeah,
I think
it's not healthy, is it?
it's not healthy. And I think probably it's a case that if she does start losing matches and she does lose the French Open, I think it might be in some ways a relief for her that then she can move on and rebuild herself as a player, as a person maybe, and maybe look at who's in her team. But I mean, it is concerning it's happening on clay. I think if this was on any other surface, I think we would be treating this a bit differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's something why we are reacting the way that we are. It's not because we think that she won't necessarily win a Grand Slam again. It's that this is quite shocking compared to where we have been at this time of the season.
Would you want to see Swiatek skip the grass court season, skip Wimbledon, if it's going to help her pause, reflect, take time off? Or do you think she should push through?
I would take some time if the French Open, even in fact, whatever happens with the French, I would take some time.
Regardless of results in Rome, French Open.
Yeah, I think you've got to stop chasing something. And I think she's got to realize what she's trying to play for and what she's trying to peak for. And is it about being number one and those records? Or is it about, getting in another slam or just winning Roland-Garros each year, whatever it might be? And the grass is not her favorite surface. She doesn't always love playing it. And if you're low on confidence, I really wouldn't want to put a player in that sort of a position. I think it's like Naomi Osaka going into the clay a few years ago where she pulled out because of the scrutiny she was under from the press and from the public. She didn't feel confident there, and she should never have been put in that position by her team that she felt she had to play it. So I hope the decision comes from her, and I hope it comes from a place that she feels better for doing it. And I think if you take the Jannik Sinner situation, you don't miss as much as you think if you take some time out. This isn't life and death in this situation, and I think that it would do her good to have perspective outside of the sport because, Casper said it's a hamster wheel and you never get off it.
Yeah. And also she did have some recent bereavement, didn't she, with her grandfather's, recent loss. So I think that probably had some influence on the result in Madrid, but it sounds like she's dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
And there is, there are stories of success there. I think about Amanda Anisimova and, how, what she went through, sort of paused, on her career, came back and, I think that's a kind of a success story there that maybe Iga Swiatek could look at in terms of tennis isn't the be all end all. Let's have a break,
have
then
experience
come back.
outside of tennis. You know, that's also what kept Serena and Venus so good, was that they had interests outside of tennis. And I think that's where it gets a little bit unhealthy. And we look at the documentary with Carlos Alcaraz, and I think he needed sometimes to, you know, to go and party in Ibiza or whatever it may be. I think obviously for Iga, a lot of it is about tennis, but then she did come down quite hard on herself when she, you know, she went to the Eras tour and then didn't do as well as she thought she would do. I think at Wimbledon, you think, hang on a minute, everyone. Like these are young individuals who are at the top of their sport. I think everyone needs a break and everyone needs to be cut a break. And I think probably with this Iga, sort of the hate train that she gets online and all of the things that you see, it's going to reach a head at some point, no matter how resilient you are. Well, unless you're Jannik Sinner, and then you can play through anything.
Is Coco Gauff the biggest threat now to Aryna Sabalenka and the French Open? Do you think she's taken over from Iga Swiatek with what she's done in Madrid?
Well, the stats say no, don't they? They say it's going to be someone outside the top 10. So I might pick an upset on her way to that potential title. What do you think, Kim?
I mean, well, the second seed for Paris it's either going to be Gauff, Pegula, or Swiatek.
Oh,
so
Pegula,
I don't
second
know how
seed on the clay. That's tasty.
Feel about that. Yeah, I think
who needs it most?
Sure,
do you think Swiatek
needs what most? The title.
The second seed.
Oh, it's hard to know.
Maybe need it. I think.
I feel like it depends.
Maybe Pegula, because she hasn't got the clay pedigree. That could be it. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
I feel like the second seed is going to be irrelevant though.
If all the seedings are irrelevant because anyone could win on the WTA, then maybe, you know, just get in the draw and that's enough.
I still think Swiatek. I think Swiatek needs that. She needs to put a good performance in Rome.
You could still draw like Emma Raducanu round one. You could draw. There are so many dangerous players out there. It could be Osaka. You know,
I do think there are positive stories for Swiatek in Madrid. The fact that she came back from a bagel down, for example, against Keys was a great result. She was battling 3-set victories. Good win over Schneider, who was playing well.
She's in the race. Like we shouldn't be panicking. It just feels like we're getting to the semi-final stage, and what is happening? 0-6 in semi-finals since Roland-Garros last year. Really big. That's a Maria Sakkari stat, isn't it? It feels like
not good.
Not good for her, but let's see. This could be even more fascinating in Paris, right?
Now you've compared her to Sakkari. I think we're due a quick break. Do join us in the second half, though, where we'll be discussing a bit more on Naomi Osaka's first title in 4 years. We'll be looking at Max Purcell's 18-month anti-doping ban, and we'll also be looking at the return of Jannik Sinner as the Italian Open in Rome gets underway this week. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group. And it's time, as always, to kick off the second half with another game. So, Joel, I think over to yourself. We've got a par for the courts this week.
Please, not German tennis players part 3.
No, Joel's game is taking a little break this week. I did look.
Thank goodness.
I did have a look at a little category,
no one left.
But it was tricky.
The whole of Germany's been done.
I was trying to do Joel's game Scandinavia edition, but it was very tricky. It was very, very tricky. Maybe it's something for the future.
Did you not know what the countries of Scandinavia were?
I hadn't even thought about that, but
maybe
we'll come
Iceland?
back. Yeah. Maybe we'll come back. We're going to go on to kind of calmer waters here. Par for the courts. We're going to go back and forth. Chris versus Kim, and I'm looking at, and we may have done this before. I don't know.
Rome winners.
It's Madrid Open winners on the men's side since it became a Masters event in 2002. And I've totted up the names. There are 12 Madrid Open men's singles champions since it became a Masters event in 2002.
Ooh, this is fun. This is going to include the blue clay, isn't it?
And I hope you don't. I hope you don't split them 6 for 6 because I do not have. I'm going to have to think of a tiebreaker on the spot. But right, okay.
Or we could share the victory. I mean, that's very
share the victory. That's very true. That's very, very true. Who would like to go first?
I'm happy to go first, Chris.
Okay, go on, Kim.
That works for you. Okay.
Kim's going to bring up like the niche answer to begin with.
Davydenko.
No, I was actually going to say Rafa Nadal. Like a boring, less niche answer, but you know. great
Before
answer.
I say correct answer, can you tell me how many times he won Madrid?
Oh, not many.
Is it like 3?
Yeah, 3, 4, no more than that.
5 times, Kim.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry.
I mean,
5 times.
I mean,
Uh,
for
that-
him on clay,
For
though,
him,
compared to 14.
That's not many, yeah.
Yes, that is a correct answer. He was a 5-time champion in Madrid. Last time was 2017. So yes, that puts you 1 up. Chris?
Well, I'm going to have to say Casper Ruud just because, I mean, Kim, you've left that wide open for me.
It happened.
Correct answer,
It
yes.
just happened.
Casper Ruud, most recent champion. 1 apiece.
Okay, Zverev.
Zverev is a 2-time champion. That is correct. 2021 was the last time he won. So that puts you 2-1 up.
I am going to go for, I think Andrei Rublev won it the year before.
That is correct. Yes. Andrei Rublev, 2024 champion. So that's 2 apiece. 3 apiece. 2 apiece? 3 apiece.
2.
2 apiece. Yeah.
We'll take 3 if it means it,
yes.
we get a higher score.
2 apiece.
Andy Murray won it, didn't he?
Andy Murray won it twice. Correct.
Oh, really?
answer. Yeah. He won in 2008 and 2015. So, yeah, that is correct. 3-2 to Kim. There's some big names still on the list here.
I think Roger did he win it on blue clay? I've got a feeling.
Roger Federer
Yeah, I think so.
is a correct answer. Yes, he won it 3 times.
I should say the master, and you should have said the warrior.
Was that 2012 blue clay?
I feel like it was.
2009.
Oh, yeah,
Oh.
he did.
I could be wrong.
He won it in 09 as well, but that was against Rafa in the final. I don't
That
think
might
Rafa
explain
got to
why
that
he won it
blue
if it was on
final,
blue
but
clay.
maybe.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, Roger Federer, correct answer. That is 3 apiece. So we've got half the names on the list.
Carlos Alcaraz won it, didn't he? Did he beat Zverev in the
Carlitos
final?
Is a correct answer. Yes, he won it in 2022 and 2023. He beat Zverev in 2022. Bonus points. Who did he beat in the other final?
I think I do know this. It was Jan-Lennard Struff because
Niche.
that's when he blasted back up to the top of the rankings. He was in there as was it a lucky loser or a qualifier or some? There was the year when there were 2 in the semi-finals. One was a lucky loser and one was a qualifier, and they played in qualifying, and then they made it to the latter stages.
Yeah, that is right. So Carlos Alcaraz is correct. So that is 4-3 Kim.
I just like stalling for time at these. Who else? I mean, have we said if we're doing the GOAT, Novak Djokovic?
We have not said Novak Djokovic.
No, you're not allowed to say him because I was going to say him next.
No, you've got nothing, Kim, right? You should have gone for the easy ones again.
Well, no, because I thought, well, anyway.
Is it the right answer,
Novak
Joel?
Djokovic is the correct answer. He's won it 3 times. Last time in 2019. Right, it's getting trickier now. 4 apiece. Kim, back to you.
Are any of them recent, Joel?
Who won it last year?
No.
I've already done that.
so
We
they're
are
recent,
going
okay.
back.
Kim,
We are
I've
going
done
back
all
now.
of. We've done all of the easy ones, I
We
think.
are going
Okay,
back
so
now.
what year since it began? Sorry, Joel.
Oh, do you want that as a clue?
No, but you told
said there
us.
are 12.
You said it was
back
since
in
2003. Oh, 2002.
Oh, right.
We're back
Okay.
to
So we're going way
2002.
back. Oh, okay.
There's a few answers that are all back in that era. Closer
Juan
to that
Carlos
time.
Ferrero.
Oh, that's a good one.
I mean, if it's going that far back.
Juan Carlos Ferrero. It's a correct answer.
Oh,
Kim, 2003 champion,
no.
beat Nicolas Massu. Oh, the pressure has been put on Chris here, big time. 5-4 Kim. Chris, you need to give me a correct answer to stay in the game.
I don't have anything at this stage.
Ooh.
I'm really quite desperate. I think I'm going to have to go for someone that I really don't think has won it, but I don't have anybody. I'm going to go for Stan Wawrinka.
Stan Wawrinka.
Mm.
It's an incorrect answer.
Oh,
Kim.
Kim,
You have
I
won
won?
part of the
you
course.
won Carlos Ferrero to be
Wow.
out of the competition.
oh,
What-
that never happens. Amazing.
What an
Stan,
emphatic
the man,
victory.
was a runner-up to Rafa in 2013.
I was gonna go Marat Safin because I think I have some memory of.
If you had said Marat Safin, we would still be playing. He was a champion in 2004.
I think Alina put that on the other day. I think
There
I might
you
have seen
go.
none of those.
There you
Yeah.
go. Any other names you want to throw at me? There's only a couple left.
Thomas Johansson,
No.
I was thinking Lubicic.
Carlos Moya,
No.
Okay,
We're
maybe
thinking 2002 and
Cilic
2007.
and Cich.
we're
No,
saying too many
No,
names.
You're saying too many names here.
Agassi.
Sorry. Clutching at
Agassi is
straws.
correct. Agassi,
Oh.
2002 champion. So Agassi,
An American winning on
Ferrero-
clay.
I know. Agassi, Ferrero, Safin.
What about Chang?
Nadal,
Michael Chang?
Federer, Murray, Djokovic. Did I say Nadal? Yeah, probably. Zverev, Alcaraz, Rublev, Ruud, and the 2007 champion who defeated Roger Federer.
Was it actually Davydenko?
It was David Nalbandian.
Oh, no.
Was it?
Of
Mm.
course.
Was
I
that the
remember
one
that
when
now.
he went on that crazy run when he defeated maybe like Djokovic,
Three of them on the
Murray,
trot.
Djokovic, Nadal, Federer? Maybe.
Was it clay then though?
I thought that was in Paris.
I thought that was in
last
Paris.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm making
no.
up. But he defeated Roger Federer in the final. So there you go.
Well,
That's
nothing
your,
too
that's your
shabby.
lot.
Very well done.
No, thank you, Joel.
Joel,
Listeners,
much
how did
better
you get this on with
week.
that?
Much better. We're in safe ground, aren't we, Kim?
Yeah, I can't believe I got the win there. But yeah, listeners, how did you get on with that? I hope you hope that challenged your brains somewhat as well, because that was trying to think
Challenged
back.
mine,
It's
Kim, it really
difficult.
did.
Yeah, challenged Chris, and that's the main
When
thing.
Kim came and dropped the Juan Carlos Ferrero, I sensed Chris may be in trouble because
I
that
knew
was
it was game
That
over.
was a rabbit out of the hat, Kim.
No, they don't always pay off those, do they, Kim?
No, normally go for some niche Russian player, but anywho,
Shramkova.
Yeah.
she's not Russian.
Not Russian.
She's Slovakian.
It doesn't matter.
She's also not female. just
I
to
think she
clarify.
might think it matters. Yeah.
Not male, not female.
Not
Anyway.
male, sorry. Yes. Goodness.
Right, let's dip into the mailbag,
Back on
which
track.
is actually our own question because we put this to our audience on social media. Question was, with Naomi Osaka successfully dropping down to 125 level and winning the title in San Malo, what other tennis player do you think would benefit from doing the same? So a number of our listeners got in touch to give their 2 pennies. So thank you very much for all your engagement. Shall I read out some of the suggestions from our audience?
Go on then.
Well, we had the likes of Kerber, Wozniacki, Kvitova. We had Sakari, Krejcikova, Kyrgios, I think, Harriet Dahl,
Wow.
Rybakina, Medvedev had admired.
We had a
So
lot of
lots of names.
Raducanus as well.
so,
Yeah.
Raducanu, lots of names. So thanks ever so much. I have to agree, Kvitova, I think, is a good shout. She's not won since coming back, has she? I think won a match. I mean,
Yeah, I mean that was going to be my answer. I think.
Oh, Kim, you're
I think
taking it away
Petra-
from him.
sorry, Joel.
I was going to say I had actually got a sneaky answer. Be based on our conversations earlier, and I was going to say Iga Swiatek.
Oh, surely not.
Well,
I'm sort of saying that
Joel.
half-heartedly. No, she's still too good. But Petra Kvitova, yes, I would say she should maybe consider dropping down to WTA 125 because she is on a comeback. She's not won a match yet. She had 3 wild cards. Defeated by Volyanets in Madrid. I think it's a good opportunity kind of for her. And, there's, Osaka's a success story there. And I don't think you're ever too big to play like at this level. And I don't know if that's a mentality that maybe exists or maybe, Kvitova, she's been around the block for a long time and it maybe just wasn't a consideration, back in the day when she was playing, at her peak. But certainly I think at the moment, I think it might be quite nice, maybe quite refreshing as well for, as I say, a player who's been around for so long. It might be quite nice to kind of go back to your roots and kind of see the kind of the developmental side of the tour. So for me, Petra Kvitova.
Guess a good answer. I can see that, but surely she's just going to serve some bombs and hit some volleys at Wimbledon. That's what she's getting ready for. It doesn't really matter what happens before, but I mean, you're right. I was looking at the schedule that she's had and it's gone 1 250 and then 3 1000s. So I mean, I feel like that's probably not the best way to ease yourself back into
The
competition.
schedule of coming back is a very tricky thing to manage because it's just like the most enticing thing to do is just like go straight to the top and see how you do, but it doesn't always work out. I mean, I guess Svitolina maybe is a little bit of an exception, but
she did really well coming back. She did some smaller tournaments before she then started to pick up some titles and some wins. Another great example would be Bencic. She played some matches towards the end. She played ITF first, and then she played some matches at some sort of bigger tournaments like a WTA 125. She lost in the final of that, I believe, in December last year, had a great off season, and she's basically picked up where she left off. I think that was testing the waters. And since then, she's really been on track. But in answering the question, I'm going to have to go back to Harriet Dart and some of the British tennis players here, because I think if it's not your strong point, a certain surface, maybe play slightly lower level tournaments at it. I think generally play lower level tournaments to get your ranking up. I think we've seen players like Maya Sharif go way above what their ranking should have been because they played the lower level tournaments. But for example, I mean, the clay season that Dart has had has involved losing in qualifying in Charleston. She lost in the first round. She got bageled in that match where she said her opponent smelt. That's not a great one. Yes. And then in Madrid, she went out in qualifying. Rome, she's gone out in qualifying. You just think you're not going to get any match practice. And it's not just about going to the big tournaments in the nice cities. It is about match practice. And I think that's also what a lot of players need to know. And I think that's where Raducanu, I hope it won't come back to haunt her, the decision to only play when she really feels motivated, which seems to be big tournaments. But I mean, that's probably the case that you have to play in order to get yourself into a good position. So I do think taking the chance to play in the second week of one of these big thousands, why not Petra Kvitova? Why not pop down to one of these tournaments? Having said that, you also don't have to if you're going to get wildcards. So that's also something to weigh up.
Yeah, it's tricky when you're a player of her note that you're going to get those wildcards.
You're going to get offers, right?
Then, yeah, it would be kind of hard to turn down. You like those, you played those tournaments before, you've won them, for example. It's hard not to.
What about Garcia, Kim?
Well, yeah, Garcia as a classic case in point, I suppose. But I think it's if you're recognizing that what you're doing at the moment isn't working, that's when, then drop down. It's fair enough if you sort of go straight out and then think, actually, this didn't work out. I'll then change it up like Osaka's done. I mean, I think maybe Djokovic should drop down if the motivation's there. Obviously, we don't really know
what level
fully
two
what's going
do you
on
think?
In him at the moment. Well, 250 is probably sufficient.
Yeah, he can't play a challenger, I don't think, with his ranking where it is. I think
no, that is probably not allowed.
Right?
Yeah,
that is right. Yeah, you can't.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, people would think that's taking a place away from someone who
he has been
really
offered previously when he wasn't allowed to play in certain countries at certain times, and he wasn't able to do that. So yeah, I think Medvedev tried it. Get a bit of form going as well early in the year. People have talked about that.
Kim, I will say with Djokovic, is there a bit of like I can't drop down to play in these tournaments. I can't have like the Almaty 125 to be my 100th title.
He needs a 100th title, doesn't he?
There's no shame in it. I think if get the ego out the way, maybe.
Rafa went to Bostar, didn't he?
He did. Yeah,
I saw him.
Sounds like a very nice little Swedish coastal city,
lovely, see?
Yeah, I'm sure it's lovely.
Nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. Well, anyway, thank you very much, Chris, for posing that question to our
who's Chris?
Mailbag. Yeah. You. But yeah, we'll see what's in next week's mailbag. Now let's get on to what's been in the news this week, because it did come out now that Sinner's returning to the tour this week that he actually did consider quitting during all the doping case and everything that was going on, and that he was feeling very uncomfortable in the locker room with players looking at him differently during the Australian Open. He felt like at one point just walking away from tennis. What do you make of those comments? Do you think they're kind of understandable given all of the sort of shenanigans around the ban and all the anti-doping criticism that's coming out of the whole tennis world? Chris?
Ooh. I think the PR machine has switched into gear. He is returning. He's very
Sympathy.
Much in Rome. And I think it's a case where some of the quotes he's come out with, I didn't feel like I'd done anything wrong. It's not really how the system works based on what you feel. It's what actually happened. And I think that's something that I do always get quite frustrated with these things. There are also quotes from Sinner where he says things, like, it's difficult and I wouldn't wish anyone to go through it as an innocent person. And it's not about being guilty or innocent in this sense. And it's not about the acts that he does. And I think this is where I do get frustrated with some of this narrative, because it is misleading and misrepresenting what has happened to the public and what is a very complicated issue. It's not black and white, guilty and innocent. And using that sort of language and saying, I was going to quit. Does anyone think Jannik Sinner was going to quit tennis? No, they don't. If he was banned for 2 years, then maybe there'd be that thought you might have. But that was never the case, and that was never what he was offered. He was cleared the first time and then came to a settlement. So it's a bit of a dramatization of it, and not to kind of diminish the personal struggle he might have gone through, because I believe there would have been one. But I do just think it just damages the system when you say an innocent person's gone through this. And is anyone else a bit sick of some of that? It's not about that. It's about the fact that you're responsible for your team. Your team made a mistake. You put out your statement. And if you want us to move on, then please just stop talking about this innocent piece. I think Sharapova did it well and said, I've done my ban. That's in the past, and I'm not talking about it anymore.
Yeah, I empathise with him sort of saying he didn't feel comfortable being around the tennis community and people looking at him and thinking about him. You do feel judged, don't you? And I can understand that, but at the same time, I think he just
needs to take it. And accept
is it kind of trying to garner sympathy, saying, "Oh, I almost quit. You should be so lucky I'm still here and I'm back playing."
The only thing I would add to it is, as you said, Kim, I totally get where he might have had those moments of personal struggle, but in a weird way, it shows to me his test of character and resilience, because he won the Australian Open. So to think he was going through all of this, and I know there were kind of, we're kind of like, in hindsight, like looking at these things, but the fact that he went and still won everything just shows, I think, how much he can maybe put up with negative things that aren't decided. He doesn't know what the outcomes are going to be, and still put his best tennis out on the court. I still think, to me, that is something that I've kind of taken from this, is that he is able to handle maybe the pressure or anything that's happening to him. And I think even there's maybe some debate on him, and people are always going to have maybe a negative kind of outlook on Sinner because of this. I don't think you can take away the fact that it's been impressive that the tennis he was able to put together in Melbourne to win the title with all this going on.
Well, the US Open as well. I think we talked about at the time his ability to compartmentalize what was going on off court.
Yeah, incredible.
And even when we didn't even know about the tests for so long in the lead up to the US Open. So again, that's not something you can take away from him, and it's something that is very, very impressive, his resilience. Given that resilience, do we think he was going to quit tennis?
Nah.
No.
That would be an extreme reaction. He's physically fit, isn't he?
He's not young. Nike would
especially
be
how the rest of the the tour has been playing. I think that's like it's hard to take that, I guess, seriously when you're seeing kind of your competitors around you sort of stumble and not take this opportunity. It feels almost like the perfect time to come back and add more pressure to the locker room. It's like, you've had your chance, you missed a step here, I'm back and I'm ready to take hold of it. So I think it's interesting from that perspective, although it sounds like he wants to try and as much as possible. I mean, I don't know how this is possible when you're going in as the number one seed to your home tournament, but trying to downplay those expectations.
Well, that's why you would, right? You'd have to. But I think, are you saying, Joel, that he was thinking about quitting, then he saw that no one else was playing very well?
Exactly. Actually, there's a chance to make some Grand Slam titles here.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, in terms of the thing I was just going to say on his return and those comments that you said he's made, downplaying expectations, is that because he hasn't had the practice? Or it is because there's going to be this absolute microscope on everything that he's doing? It's a pressure cooker, yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to have those sorts of comments, put them out there. It does take.
I mean, the suspension hasn't allowed him, to practice. We saw those little clips of him with Draper. So I think that's, probably helpful. It's not like he's been able to, I feel like, to do much, but yeah. certainly, I think a player of his quality, again, it's just going to be a test of how good he is. We know he's, I think, mentally resilient, but can he now bounce back and do the business? It's going to be an interesting time on the tour.
And true, he hasn't actually been in front of some of these people, Kim, has he? When you think about those locker room moments, because he wasn't allowed to be at any tournaments or even see these people or contact them in any way. So do you think that if he didn't enjoy Australia coming back, do you think that's going to be an extra layer of difficulty?
I think there's a bit more that we know about the case since then. So I think a bit more has come out, I guess, in the wash about like the timing of the ban and why they sort of negotiated the 3 months. So I think some players may still have issues, and in the locker room, you might still feel that initial kind of unease. But I think a lot of players are just getting on with their own lives and careers and aren't going to obsess too much.
He's just going to be in the champions locker room. He's not going to be in the locker room.
Yeah, he'll probably have his own
people.
private,
Maybe Casper,
leather and
Casper and Jack will give him some flowers.
That's probably going to be the litmus test, isn't it? Casper Ruud, nicest guy on the tour. It'd be interesting, I think, to see how his react, because if he reacts in a slightly kind of maybe unsure, uncertain way, maybe people will look at that.
I can't see him doing that. I can't see him shunning him, especially Jannik Sinner. It'd be hard to shun because he's got his PR machine out again to announce that he's launched a foundation, the Jannik Sinner Foundation. Which is going to be focused on empowering children through education and sports. Now, the players getting younger and younger at which they're sort of launching these initiatives, because I think it's all very well to have, Roger, Rafa, etc., having foundations but I don't think either of them brought out a foundation this early in their career. It just seems that it's kind of like the done thing now. You have to, the sooner you can bring something out, the better. But am I being cynical with that?
I mean, I was going to be cynical and say the timing of this on the eve of returning, it's almost like they'd like the focus to be on something else, but obviously take nothing away from the fact that when these things are set up, you do hope they're run properly and they do give back and they do make a difference. And it sounds like
absolutely.
That's very much the intention. And, these players are pretty much, their whole industries from such a young age now. I think the money is crazy, the fame and the impact. So hopefully this will do, a lot of good. And he's got many, many years of running this foundation, into the future. As you say, Kim, it's very early on for him.
Absolutely. I noticed they've got Formula One, people who like F1, Stefano Domenicali. He's the CEO, I think, of this foundation, or he's on the board of directors, but he's heavily involved in F1, isn't he? So obviously got some top people involved in it. So I'm sure it will do well for and obviously helping to inspire the next generation of Italian youngsters through sport. But let's have a look now what else came out recently in the news. Chris, you're going to absolutely be in your element here. So I know how much you love discussing a bit of kind of
suspension weekly on the tennis suspension weekly.
This week's ban.
Max Purcell, who many listeners will know as a sort of stalwart Australian doubles player. He's won slams, he's won 2 slams. He's been
good
around
moustache.
quite a while. Yeah. Got a good moustache. Does he wear the long hats, I think?
He has a long hair indeed.
Hats. Yeah. He has been given an 18-month ban after he breached the tennis's anti-doping program rules, and he's also been ordered to repay over $200,000 in prize money. The reason he has been banned is because he had a transfusion of vitamins that was above the allowable limit of 100 milliliters. He said at the time he had unknowingly received this transfusion, but it's come out after an investigation that actually text messages were found between himself and another player where they admitted to arranging a hydration session at clinic in Bali. And there were a lot of texts going back and forth about whether he could justify getting this infusion, whether it would be prohibited under the WADA code, requesting the staff at the clinic not to keep receipts, etc. So sounds like he was aware and trying to perhaps cover things up. Coming to you first, Chris, what do you make of this? I don't think I've ever heard this before, a player being banned because of a vitamin doping.
Yes.
It's quite bizarre.
It is very bizarre, but this is relating to a prohibited method rather than testing positive for anything. So no one is saying with this, and you cannot say that he's taken a positive, was tested positive for anything. So that's the only positive for him. The 18 months is also not very positive. It could have been as long as, I believe, 24 months. I think it could have been 2 years. I think it was reduced because he did cooperate. But the way this story came out did definitely, got my attention, because he said that he had reported himself in. I think this was just before Christmas and before the Australian Open, and that's not the case at all. Actually, he was rumbled when someone else's player two in this, his phone was taken, and we looked at all of this stuff about the invasion of privacy by taking phones, but this is how it was caught. And the reason why this is so significant is because you're only allowed 100 milliliters within 12 hours when it comes to these sort of infusions that people do. And this was obviously 5 times that. And the reason why this is of significance is because it's used, and this method is used to actually flush your system or mask a prohibited substance, as well as distort your athlete biological passport. So that's one side of it. It can also enhance performance by increasing like plasma volumes. There are all sorts of things that you can also do, but it's one of those things where the way that it was done actually means that you don't know if something worse has been done. So you can only actually go on the prohibited method. I would say, and this is something I'll put to both of you, 18 months, when we look at the lack of consistency that comes out of the ITIA, as well as what happens when it comes to, WADA and some of the rulings that we see, 18 months for this versus saying no ban from the ITIA for Jannik Sinner, which then got negotiated to 3 months. It does just feel like it's all over the place when it comes to some of these rulings, and it's not clearing things up, because this is not good. You could argue that this is, in some ways, as bad as a positive test, because it could be seen as masking positive tests and the method, but surely this should not be 18 months compared to Jannik Sinner's 3 months.
There's no proof that it was masking anything, is it? So you don't have evidence of that. I think it's because of the text messages and the sort of allusion to he was trying to cover it up that probably didn't bode well for him.
That felt more damning maybe than the
Well, it meant that he was always going to get 2 years, and negotiation meant that it went down because they did have him hook, line, and sinker for those messages. But reflecting on the difference in the way this has been handled and the way that this result has come out, do you have any sort of, how does it feel from someone who's not as in the doping world as I am, maybe?
It still feels to me like he's not as a famous tennis player, maybe as obviously a Jannik Sinner. And there's going to be a lot of people out there who may look at this and think it's still one rule for the top players and one rule for everyone else. And, I don't think this is kind of, who's the British player? I forget.
Tara Moore.
Yeah, it's not Tara Moore levels. It's, for me, it's sort of somewhere in between. But inherently, I'm kind of like with Jannik Sinner. That's a banned substance, which feels to me
2
more
positive tests.
Yeah, that feels to me
explained
more
away without a ban or missing tournaments.
Yeah,
I
think with quantity. I feel to me is a little bit of a less of it. I'm not an expert. I don't know. I'm just sort of putting my view out there, but it feels still to me like you'd look at this one rule maybe for top players, a harsher rule for like non-top players.
You do just have to think as well, Kim,
and
when
players.
It comes to this, for Max, he was really getting something going with Jordan Thompson in the doubles, and this comes at such a bad point for his career, don't you think? What an idiot is all I can think of with this.
To Aussie Davis Cup and doubles, and I'm curious who the second player was who was texting. Who they've got.
Will we ever find out?
Will we find out? I doubt it, but yeah, I do think there's a big disproportionate difference in the response and the length of ban based on these 2 different cases. But yeah, thanks, Chris, for providing your explanation and insight, especially to these ones, because
I look forward to the next
more and more, doesn't it?
Yeah, look forward to the next
one.
Tennis Suspension Weekly.
Yeah. Well, let's have a look at something a bit more positive. The Italian Open in Rome is obviously starting this week. We don't have Djokovic there. He's not attending. He's not playing. Carlitos is back, though. We do have Alcaraz in attendance, as well as obviously Sinner. So yeah, let's have a look at who we think's going to go all the way. Swiatek and Zverev are the defending champions. So will they be able to get the titles again? How will Draper and Ruud do as well? Will they go deep like they did in Madrid? Let's make some predictions, shall we? We've had a look at the draws, done a bit of analysis.
How do we think about Sinner's draw? First of all, how do we, just before we go to prediction, how do we think about Sinner's first draw back on the tour?
He opens against either Navoni or Federico Cina. No, yeah.
Sinner.
Is that right?
I'm going to call him Sinner versus Sinner versus Sinner.
Who's an Italian who we're not too au fait with, and Navone, Argentinian, fairly decent. You know, my
ADF is also in the Cerundolo's played very well.
And Ruud is in this quarter as well. I think it's quite tricky.
Yeah, could be easier. Yeah, Ruud as the quarterfinal was where my eye was initially going. I thought Ruud could get the win over sort of.
Well, I'm sure that Joel has Casper winning the title, given whoever's performed best last week, he tends to go with.
It's so funny.
I might have done the same.
Oh,
I just think that. Are we making some predictions?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's just.
I'm going to come to you. Yeah, right. Semi-final lineup, Joel.
I do have Ruud defeating Sinner in the quarters, and I've got a Ruud versus Arnaldi semi-final. I think Arnaldi, I think, is actually going to be the Italian who does well here, and is going to be last Italian standing. And I've got Alcaraz Tsitsipas as my bottom half semi-final.
Excellent. Chris, what about yourself?
I always panic in this section that I've got the draw wrong when I see different names from all of us. I'm like, is this even possible? But I'm backing Jannik Sinner. I think for the exact reasons that Joel has said. I think his resilience has showed us time and time again what he can do. And I think there's something about this that I think is just going to be, whatever you think about him, it's going to be an epic moment. I think he's going to get into that semi-final, and spoiler alert, he might go further, but I think he's going to take on someone who's got a good record against Alex de Minaur. And I think in the other semi-final, there will also be an Italian that is not Arnaldi. I think Musetti Alcaraz could be a very tasty semi-final lineup.
I went for Musetti as well, actually. I've got Ruud against Mensik as my first semi-final.
Yeah. Good one.
And then I've gone a bit rogue. I've gone for another Italian.
What have you done now?
I've gone for Darderi.
Not Sina.
Luciano Darderi against Musetti for the other semi-final. I thought, why not? And
Inspired in Rome.
Yes, so two Italians.
He did get bageled as the second seed at the Provence Challenger.
Yes, that doesn't
in the first
count.
round.
Fine.
Just checking, Kim, that you were aware of that one.
But who is going to be our finalist and champion, do we
think? If you say Darderi's winning this, Kim,
don't worry,
you will have to leave the podcast.
There's a limit to my madness, yeah.
I've got Ruud Alcaraz in the final, and I think Alcaraz is going to win. I know he had a little bit of, he's taken a week off for Madrid. Feels more precautionary than anything. I think with a break coming back, I think he's going to be the champion in Rome.
Okay, Chris?
Well, I've gone Sinner Musetti, and I've gone back and forth as to what will happen. But I think Musetti will do the Italian thing, and he will give Sinner the win, even if he's a set to the good. And I've gone for Sinner. I've had to put it there. I think it would be fascinating to see if he could do it after all that time out. And I kind of just think, let's see. And why would I not think he could?
Yeah, well, exactly. He's not going to have forgotten how to play tennis, is he? I've gone for Ruud against Musetti as my final, with Ruud winning. I think he's going to suddenly get
do the double
1,000s in a row. But then I think I said that with Rune after he won in Barcelona.
Actually, you have got a habit of this now. Yeah,
I know. I'm doing.
You love the Scandies as well, don't you? Now,
yes, and I love putting random people in there who are never going to do anything. But who knows? I like to spice it up. Let's go on to the WTA draw now and do the same with our predictions here. So, Chris, coming to you first. Semi-finals. Who's making
really
them?
Spiced it up, have I? But I went for Rybakina for this section. She has won in Rome before. She's got maybe that's possible. Rybakina, Gauff, Ostapenko, Svitolina.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
No one
Joel.
that rogue.
Yeah. Do you know what? I went Ostapenko, Svitolina as well in that bottom half semi-final. I've got Sabalenka and Draper in my top half semi-final. I just can't see it not being Sabalenka, and I think Mira Andreeva, I think she's going to show her talents on the tennis court. So yeah, Sabalenka and Andreeva.
Yeah, I've got Sabalenka and Gauff, so a sort of an amalgamation of yours. And then I've gone for Diana Schneider against Iga Swiatek.
She was pretty good against Iga. She almost got her. Yeah.
So I do think Swiatek's going to maybe get to the semis again. I know neither of you have gone for her, but I think I'm putting her there or thereabouts still. And final and champion then, Chris?
I've gone for Gauff Svitolina, and I've said that Gauff's going to get it. Svitolina has won Rome multiple times, but I just think something's reignited in Gauff, and I think she can do it.
Joel?
I've gone Andreeva versus Svitolina. Just to add a seed of doubt, I'm going for the upset, and Andreeva is going to defeat Sabalenka in the semis. But I've got Elina Svitolina as my champion.
I'm loving these from you, Joel. This is a particularly exciting women's prediction from you.
Well, I've gone for Sabalenka Schneider in the final, and I've gone for Sabalenka to win. She's going to continue her dominance, and she's going to edge
probably
towards the highest
bet.
Points total. Yeah.
She's on her way.
I feel like we've got across the board, we've got some solid champions from all of us and finalists for both the men's and women's draws in Rome.
Well, that is a bumper episode for our latest tour catch-up. We're going to end it there. The Italian Open coming our way, another 2-week clay court event on the road to Roland-Garros. I hope you've enjoyed the ride with us, as always, at Tennis Weekly HQ. Remember to subscribe to us so you don't miss a moment of the ATP and WTA action. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all your favourite podcasting platforms out there.
And if you love what you're hearing, then be sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube.
And so that I don't have to have another mailbag based on a Twitter poll that I set up, you can follow us, and you can also submit something on our social media as well as on our email. On social media, we're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, and Threads. The handle for all of those is Tennis Weekly Pod. And if you'd like to submit the old-fashioned way via email, you can drop us an email at tennisweeklypod@gmail.com or visit our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we'll be back next week for another talk catch-up brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group. But until then, it's goodbye from Kim.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Tennis Weekly.